There is an old rule in writing that everyone loves to quote, but nobody actually follows. Show, don't tell. Somewhere along the line, the gaming industry decided to invent a third option. Scream everything through a megaphone while holding the player's hand. You cannot walk 5 feet in a modern release without a UI marker flashing, a companion character spoiling the puzzle solution, or a diary entry explicitly explaining that the skeleton on the floor died because it got stabbed. It's kind of patronizing, it's lazy, and it completely obliterates any sense of discovery. When every narrative arc is delivered with a corporate safety net, curiosity dies a quiet death. Welcome everybody back to OpenSplit, and today I want to tackle the idea of the silent storyteller, and we're gonna see if it's actually a curse or a blessing. Let's get started. The concept of the silent storyteller. Let's clarify what this actually means. This isn't about environmental storytelling in the traditional sense. I am not basically talking about looking at a teddy bear placed next to a gas mask and feeling sad. This is still just static decoration. This is an artist placing a prop to trigger what he thinks is a predictable emotional response. True silent storytelling happens when the systems of a game interact to create a historical record of your specific actions, failures, and accidental discoveries. The environment isn't pre-authored. The game engine itself acts as an impartial clerk, documenting every choice you make without ever saying a single word. So, let's look at two different games that have this exact approach and analyze how they turn the player into an accidental archaeologist and see if removing traditional narrative entirely is a blessing or just a mechanical curse. The philosophy of mutual confusion. If you want to see a game that aligns player ignorance with character ignorance perfectly, look at Loop Hero. It is one of my favorite games. Most games pull this cheap trick where you, the player, know exactly what the universe is, but the protagonist is stumbling around clueless. Here, you are just as profoundly lost as the guy on the screen. You don't have a tactical advantage over his amnesia, at least not at the start. If you play the game multiple times, obviously you know how the game works. The story does not exist in a quest log or a codex entry, it exists in the literal geometry of the cards you place down on a barren track. The universe has been completely wiped out into this featureless, dark void. Every time you place a mountain, a graveyard, or a vampire mansion, you are doing much more than just adjusting a statistical modifier for your character. You are attempting to piece reality back together from a broken memory, from a broken world. The gameplay loop is the narrative. The fact that the world resets every time you leave and that the structures morph into entirely new threats based on what you put next to them creates this brilliant, unsettling mystery. Why does placing 10 mountains together suddenly spawn a goblin camp? Well, you can think of it as a narrative device. There is no tutorial NPC explaining the metaphysics of the void, but it makes sense. Mountains are where goblins live, so if you put too many mountains together, you're gonna get a goblin camp. In the game, what you have to do is deduce the systemic logic yourself. It's a broken universe, and only through trial and error you will find out. The plot isn't a reward you get for finishing the gameplay. The gameplay is the literal excavation of the plot. Now in this case, the main character isn't actually silent, but the narration around it is silent. The world just exists for you to explore and to know how it works. This is exactly the kind of immersion that I like about this game. It doesn't handhold you. You have to figure things out for yourself. The living ledger of misery. Moving from a cosmic loop to a chaotic sandbox, we have RimWorld. This game drops you into a scenario and just lets you run wild. What I think is fascinating about RimWorld is that despite this kind of sandbox type of scenario, the game itself has a grounded narrative, because the world itself possesses a very sharp, uncompromising identity. More than a playground, it's a meat grinder with distinct rules. The story here is written in bloodstains and scar tissue. You don't need a cinematic cutscene to tell you a raid was a near-fatal disaster. You can see it, you can feel it. You can't just look at your base. The scorched walls from a localized fire, well, they're not scorched, they're just broken, but you can see the fire has done its thing. Observing the aftermath even more, you can see the blood splatters in the choke points, and later on 3 hastily dug graves right outside the freezer so your people don't snap. That is a historical text of your colony, and you are like reading the geology of a crisis. The identity of the Rim comes from the simulation running itself. The sudden appearance of ancient mechanoids or a bizarre semi-fantastical creature isn't a scripted event designed to match your level or advance the plot in any way. Having no storyteller, having him silent, allows the world to be random and allows the lore to be a systemic part of the world itself. The environment speaks through physical consequences and context. When you click on a colonist and see they have a permanent bionic leg, well, that tells you about the technology of this world. And why is the leg severed? Well, a mechanical centipede severed their original one 3 seasons ago. That tells you something about the entities, about the story of this world. I personally think this is a way more compelling way to have a survival narrative than just doing a pre-written script. You remember the exact night it happened, the medicine shortage that followed, and the desperate triage. It just happens by itself, proving that simulated trauma is definitely, at least for me, a little bit more memorable than written drama. Okay, with that we are at the end of this video, so what is the actual friction here? A traditional game hands you a quest journal that tells you exactly what you did and why you did it, and also how you should feel about it. It forces an emotional consensus. The silent way of storytelling forces you to look at the wreckage of the game's state and infer the plot yourself. The latter is far more personal of an experience because it requires active intellectual labor. When you look at a ruined colony in RimWorld or a completely reshaped, unforgiving track in Loop Hero, you are looking at the direct, systemic momentum of your own choices. The profound weight of a simulated trauma and systemic chaos. You are playing in a reactive world that directly manifests your choices into physical consequences, meticulously archiving your failures as well. These 2 games, and many more like them, reward you by treating you like a true gamer. Alright, that's basically it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the ride. If so, hit that subscribe button right now, like and share the video. You can also check out my own survival roguelike 3876 AD Corruption on Steam. I try to add new story content every Friday, so you always have something new to look forward to. But with that said, thanks again for watching, and let's meet again in the next one. Bye!